Hi, everybody. Jennifer Schaus here. We are coming to you live today from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us in our webinar series in 2024 covering the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulations. We go sequentially each week on Wednesdays and Fridays, unless, of course, there's a holiday, covering each part of the FAR. All of our webinars are complimentary and they're recorded. If you're looking for the recording, those are on our YouTube channel, and the PowerPoints are on slideshare.net. Just type in the FAR part number and you will you'll find the slides. If you're trying to sign up for any of the future parts that we're covering, or if you're looking for any of the recordings, you can find them here on our website under the section called the FAR. And there is no one, you have to register individually for each of the parts. If you're anxious to learn about one of the parts that we have yet to get to, we did cover this exact topic in 2020. So if you go over to the section called webinars and scroll down to the FAR 2020, you'll find all 52 parts of the FAR. You'll also find the DFARs and the FAR supplements. Keep in mind these are dated, so 2020 was 4 years ago, and some of these regulations have changed. So keep that in mind as you're listening to them. Just a little bit about us. We do provide professional consulting services for government contractors, primarily helping them with GSA schedules and other contract vehicles. More information about us is on our website under the About Us section. The event that you're selling to federal contractors, we do offer newsletter advertising, webinar advertising, and other services listed here on the screen. Some upcoming webinars that we've got with our friends over at the Western Michigan Apex Accelerator on March 28th. We're covering a GSA schedule class. If anyone needs help with DHS PACS or NESA SOUP, you can send us an email and we'll provide pricing. Tomorrow we've got a great webinar with our friends over at Agile ATS covering recruiting strategies. So any professional services firms, if you have, let's say, 2 or 3 employees, or maybe not even that, and suddenly you've won a contract for, let's say, IT professional services or something where you need suddenly a bazillion employees, Agile ATS will be covering how to leverage their platform to fill those spots. At the end of the month on March 26th, our friends at MyGovWatch are covering, are basically sharing some details about a survey that they conducted with contracting officers on basically RFPs. So it should be pretty interesting. We've got a good group that's signed up and encourage you to sign up as well. It's going to be impossible for you to remember the link here to sign up, so we can direct you over to our website under the section called events. Even though these are webinars, they're listed on our events section, and they are complimentary, so you can just sign up there. Later in the year, we've got a 2-part series on SBIRs with Carrie Palmatier. She's also covering the next FAR part this week on Friday for us, I believe. But these are SBIR webinars on 2 consecutive Thursdays in June. Those are also on our website under events. Okay, our webinars are complimentary thanks to our longtime and generous corporate sponsors. We want to take a moment now to thank them. Our friends at GovEvents are the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our webinars and our events on govevents.com, as well as recordings from our past 600+ government contracting webinars. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alert. That's the go-to publication for contracting opportunities for small, women-owned, veteran-owned, hub zone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. The Fairfax Economic Development Authority has an online calendar of events and webinars, and we want to thank them for posting our events and webinars on their calendar. The Virginia PTAC, which is now the Virginia Apex Accelerator at George Mason University in Fairfax, offers free one-on-one counseling to established government contracting firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. If you are interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore services, review homework recommendations, register for live training, and find useful links to agencies and other self-directed learning. One-on-one counseling is limited to eligible client companies. Appointment requests are handled in the order they were received and based on counselor availability due to high demand. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. The Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce monthly GovCon Council meeting allows peers to network, learn about upcoming events, opportunities, and also contribute to future programming. The meetings take place the fourth Tuesday of each month at 8:30 a.m. at the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce. The next meeting will be on Tuesday, March 26th. BidSpeed, do you want help winning contracts, government contracts? BidSpeed can help. Users can find bidding opportunities from federal, state, and local government. Additionally, you can search for teaming partners, incumbent point of contact, expiring contracts, compliance matrix, and also proposal templates. Create your login today at bidspeed.com. BidSpeed is an official partner of the U.S. SBA's 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program. FBC events are the ultimate engagement channel to bring government and industry together. 68% of government personnel report that they attend more than one event each year. FBC has worked with government and industry for 45 plus years to create gatherings where ideas are shared and to help government achieve its goals. This includes agency industry days, cybersecurity symposiums, tech expos, and off-site meetings. FBC provides full lifecycle meeting planning and event management. With over 5,000 meetings under their belt, FBC has the experience, systems, and personnel to make your next event exceptional. Learn more at fbcinc.com. Please check out our friends at GovBrew. GovBrew is the most read government contracting newsletter, keeping thousands of government contracting professionals in the loop with news, updates, and opportunities in the federal contracting market, all in a fun and accessible email that only takes 5 minutes to read. It's 100% free to join. It goes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. It's filled with great content, event postings, webinars, and more. We encourage you to sign up at govbrew.co, or you can use the QR code you see on the screen. Okay, and now the reason that we're here to cover the FAR, we are today on FAR Part 14. Friday will be FAR Part 15, but FAR Part 14 covers sealed bidding, and we are blessed to have Michael Richard with us. He's with McCarter in English. I'm going to go ahead and put myself on mute. Michael, it's great to have you with us. I'll turn the floor over to you and just let me know when you want your next slide.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Nice to be here with all of you today. As Jennifer said, I'm Michael Richard. I'm with McCarter in English. We are a full-service law firm. We also have a government contracts practice. I am special counsel for government contracts. It's really all I do is compliance, bid protests, claims, False Claims Act litigation, things like that. I've also served as general counsel for a mid-sized government contractor before. So I've been in the industry for quite some time. This is what I do. We're here today. You can move to the next slide, please. We're here today to talk about FAR Part 14, which deals with sealed bidding, which you don't see as much of anymore, but it is still used quite a bit. So first thing I want to talk about is when is sealed bidding used, and then I'll give you some examples of the kind of procurements that sealed bidding is used for, as opposed to the negotiated procurements that most of you are probably familiar with. This is not RFPs. This is not requests for proposals or quotes. This is invitations for bids, and it is its own special animal. It used to be used all the time, but now it's only used in these certain circumstances. And as with many parts of the FAR, you have to actually go to another section to see what the rule is for when to use FAR Part 14. And it's FAR 6.401 that establishes that you use sealed bidding when time permits the solicitation, submission, and evaluation of sealed bids. The award will be made on the basis of price and other price-related factors. What are price-related factors? We'll get into that in some detail later on. It's not necessary to conduct discussions with the responding offers about their bids, and there's a reasonable expectation of receiving more than one sealed bid. How do they form a reasonable expectation? The usual methods. They put out pre-solicitation notices, they put out requests to industry, things like that. to make sure that there's going to be people who are going to bid on this. Really, the key thing to take away here is that this is about when price is the determinative factor. If there are non-price related evaluation factors like past performance or technical competency and things like that, they're not supposed to use field bidding. This is supposed to be put in your bid and the company with the lowest price gets the work. And obviously discussions, that's not really conducive with sealed bidding. They're supposed to open the bid and give the award to the lowest responsible bidder. It's not supposed to be a negotiation process like you have with an RFP. Next slide, please. So other limitations on when sealed bids are used. They're generally not for OCONUS procurements. That's because those are assumed to need discussions and usually do because of the unique laws and the unique conditions of procuring materials and services for use overseas. They're generally only supposed to be used for firm fixed price contracts. It can be a firm fixed price contract with an economic price adjustment clause. That's considered reasonable. Remember, this is all supposed to be about price. An economic price adjustment clause, as probably most know, allows the government, allows the parties to change the price, raise the price of the contract to account for changes in material costs or inflation, things like that. But you can apply that to everybody's contract equally, and so consequently, you know what your price is. The economic price adjustment clause is going to affect them all the same. So you're making a determination solely based on price. If you, for some reason, would see a sealed bid being used on a cost reimbursable or time and materials contract, you should raise your hand and talk to a legal professional, because that's not typically considered to be something that the government should be doing. It can be used for classified work. I've worked on, I'm familiar with the classified realm, and I don't see a lot of sealed bidding there. I don't know if anybody else does, but technically it can be used for it. Next slide, please. So I mentioned I would bring up some examples. These are all pulled from SAM. They are current, or at least current when I wrote these slides last week, current solicitations that are going to be or are being procured through IFBs. So they include this VA SDVOSB, that's service disabled veteran-owned small business set aside to replace flooring in the surgical suite of a VA hospital in New York, an Army small business set aside to replace lighting systems, a USAID small business set aside for construction of an operations building in Tinker, and a Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration road small business set aside for road construction in a wildlife refuge. So you'll notice a couple things about these. These are all, first off, they're all obviously small business set asides. There's nothing that requires you to use sealed bidding for small business set asides. In fact, it's not typical, but some of the factors that go into choosing something as a set aside also may influence the government's decision to use the IFB process rather than negotiated procurement. And that is, if it's a relatively straightforward project where really you're not that concerned about unique technical issues, you're not that concerned about past performance, you just want to hire a local contractor to come and do the work. Sealed bidding is pretty well suited for that, and small business set asides are pretty well suited for that. So that's why you see a lot of crossover between the two. And a lot of these you'll notice they're not hugely complex projects. You see a lot less use of sealed bidding for $100 million base, design build project on a base than you would for, hey, we need you to build one building, and that building on Tinker Air Force Base, that's design bid build, which means that they give you all the specifications, they tell you exactly what they want, they just want you to come in and build it to the spec, and that can have some complications to it, certainly, as any construction contractor will tell you, but it's a lot simpler than some of the projects that are out there. Next slide, please. So how does the process work? What actually goes into it? Well, the elements, which is how it's titled in the FAR, in FAR 14.101, the government agency will publicize a clear, accurate, and complete invitation for bids. That's the IFB I've been referencing. The IFB should include all the documents needed to bid the project. There should never be, that you need to go get something else or something like that. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be provided to you by saying, hey, the documents are in this place and you can access them in this way. But it shouldn't be a matter of some people get sent documents that other people get sent. It's supposed to be a completely even playing field. Bidders submit their bids by the due date. The government evaluates the bids without discussions on the basis of price alone. Like I said, price and price-related factors are the only things they're supposed to consider. And the government will award the contract to the lowest responsible bidder. What makes a bidder responsible, we'll come back to that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So what actually goes into the invitation for bids? FAR 14.201 sets out the different parts of the IFB. These are generally instructions for contracting officers, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'm just trying to give you contractors the idea of what's going to be in the IFBs that you look at if you haven't seen them before, and how to think about them. Certainly, if any of our friends from the government are here, then maybe this will be useful for you to know where the parts are that you got to look at, put your IFB together. The schedule is the first part. You shouldn't think of a schedule in terms of a time schedule. It's not a project schedule. It is. It refers to the basic solicitation document, what becomes the basic contract document. So it includes standard form 33 or 1447. That's the cover page that most of you are probably familiar with. It has the contract line item numbers with descriptions. I'm sure you've all seen that. CLIN number 001, and it'll say, do these things, provide this service at this time at this location. It's a very basic description with a space for a price to be entered. Specifications can be included. Sometimes specifications are referenced or included separately. Packaging and marking, inspection and acceptance, delivery and performance locations, special contract administration requirements. Usually you'll see things like wide area workflow will be on the schedule, things like that. That's how they're going to pay. And special contract requirements. H clauses, things like that can end up here on the schedule. Next slide, please. So what else goes in? All the parts that you've seen before. It's not that different from an RFP, really. Again, these are all drawn from 14.201. You'll have a list of contract clauses. I'm talking about the typical list that you'll see of FAR clauses that are included. Those are all, based on the contents of the topic of the solicitation, the type of procurement. The specific clauses get imported based on other parts of the FAR, and you get a list. It will include a list of all the contract documents, the exhibits, the attachments. Sometimes that will be the actual physical document. Sometimes that will be a link to the document. Sometimes it will be a means to obtain the document. But everything that goes into the IFB, all the documents that make up a part of it should be there. And then representations and instructions. Again, this is much like it is in an RFP with one key difference that I'll cover in just a moment. It's going to have standard reps inserts. You don't get out of those just because it's an IFB rather than an RFP. You still have to make a lot of the same representations and certifications that any government contractor would. It's going to have sectionality instructions to bidders. Those are going to be a little different from what's in an RFP, but it's still going to be relatively straightforward, telling you when you have to submit your bid, who it goes to, basic instructions like that, what has to be in the bid for it to be responsible. And then section M is evaluation factors. Well, obviously I've said, about nothing is supposed to be considered here except price. The evaluation factors they're talking about here, again, are price related factors, and we will get into those in more detail in just a little bit. But that's all that we're talking about for evaluation factors. You should never see an IFB that has past performance or technical competency or management or anything like that. None of those are supposed to be part of an IFB solicitation. And then you'll have appropriate sealed bidding specific FAR provisions. Those include things like amend 52214-3 is amendments to invitations for bid. -4 is false statements in bid. -5 is submissions of bids. These are not, they're not that different from the similar clauses that you have for negotiated procurements, but you know, they're specific to the bidding process. They are a little bit different. It is important that you make sure you're referring to the sealed bid FAR clauses when you're doing this. I have seen people before make the mistake of referring to negotiated procurement clauses when they're dealing with sealed bidding because it's just the clause they're used to. So make sure that you're looking at the right clause, and hopefully the specific one, including the alternate if possible, listed in your particular IFB. Next slide, please. So I said we'd get to price-related factors. Here it is. What do these include? Transportation and inspection costs. So, you know, obviously, my price for something may be, you know, maybe $100,000. My competitor's price might be $90,000. But if my competitor is in, you know, it's located in California and I'm in New York, and my transport costs are $3,000 and my competitors are $20,000, obviously that makes a big difference. It's pretty straightforward. Multiple award considerations. The government is allowed to consider whether or not it will have to award more than one contract, and is allowed to consider the administrative costs of administering more than one contract in calculating the price that it's going to incur. So an example of that would be if there are 3 contractors who have bid 3 different parts of a procurement, and so the government, to get everything at once, will have to award to all 3 of them. Or it can award to one contractor with a slightly higher price, but it will save on administrative costs because it's one contract versus 3. The government's allowed to take that into account and make an award to the contractor with a slightly higher price. But this is really usually a mathematical computation. It's just they have an administrative cost worked out, they apply it on top of the greater number of contracts, and then they compare it to the cost of the single contract. They're also allowed to take into account federal, state, and local taxes, no surprise there. Origin of materials also matters, particularly for my friends in construction out there. I do a lot of Buy American Act work, and it's always critical that your bid complies with Buy American Act provisions. The government is, of course, allowed to take that into account and reject the bid if it does not comply with Buy American, even if it's the lower price bid. Next slide, please. So here's some more details about the IFB. Most of the time, you're going to see 30 days for a response. In theory, you see that, you know, that's sort of the way it's supposed to be across the board, but it's a lot less common on negotiated procurements. IFBs are meant to be quick. They're meant to be, the government, you know, figures out its need, they put together an IFB, they get it out to bidders. They all show up on SAM. You know, in reality, that's where all of them are at this point. They used to do them by publication in industry journals. I'm sure there's potentially some industries where that might still be done, but for the most part, they're all going up on SAM. They get them out there, and they are expecting to get bids back in about 30 days. Technically, they should allow more time if it's a more complicated procurement, but what I've found is that typically, if it is a more complicated procurement, it just gets increasingly more likely that it's going to be put out through a negotiated procurement rather than sealed bidding anyway. Bid samples and descriptive literature, I should say there's really one limitation on that. If it's a relatively straightforward procurement, but it's a large quantity of goods, you can see sealed bids on very high dollar items. And when I say high dollar items, I mean, if you want to buy, the government wants to buy a bunch of firearms and they're expensive, but they're, you know, on the market, they may use sealed bidding for that. There's no reason not to. It's not a matter of negotiating, they're buying on price. Bid samples and descriptive literature are generally not required unless the product cannot be adequately described. If the product or the material that you're talking about needs to be held to understand it, then a bid sample may be required. If you're, you know, bidding a roofing contract and you want to bid a specific roofing material and you want, you know, they need to understand what it is, you may need to submit a bid. Or firearms, like the example I just used, if you want them to know the heft and qualities of the weapon, you would potentially submit a sample. Other than that, though, it's not generally something you have to do. Fax or email submission can be used, and the IFB can send directly to prospective bidders, but generally it has to be publicized. Like I said, they're almost all on SAM. You know, I have seen situations where the government makes known bidders aware that an IFB has just come out, but in most cases they just do it by saying, hey, we just posted on SAM, you should go see it there. I think at this stage it's pretty unusual to have the government actually send the IFB to particular bidders, but it is allowed. Next slide, please. So before bid opening, the government is allowed to hold a pre-bid conference. You know, this is not magic. It's just getting everybody together to talk about the issues, same as a pre-proposal conference with an RFP. The government may amend the IFB as needed pre-opening. The amendment obviously has to be provided to all bidders. And the government can cancel the IFB pre-opening if there's no longer a requirement, or if the requirement has changed so much that amendment is not feasible. Cancellation of an IFB obviously can be distressing to people who've already put a lot of time and money into it. So we'll talk a little bit more further on about cancellation and how that works and what the requirements are. Next slide, please. Okay, bids and bid opening. So this is where, you know, the rubber meets the road. What is required for your bid to be a valid bid? Well, a responsive bid is one that complies with the IFB in all material respects. You know, it has to be, minor issues can be ignored, but they got to be really minor. It's got to be compliant with everything that the IFB is asking for. You can't change it. You can't enter contingencies. This is supposed to be an apples to apples comparison. So it's pretty unusual for the government to accept a bid that doesn't approach the project in a pretty standard way. You know, obviously there are exceptions here and there, but it's not normal. Normally you want to submit a bid, you know, if they ask for you to replace the flooring in a hospital surgical suite, you come in and you say, this is flooring that's used in a standard surgical suite. This is, you know, this is our cost to install it. This is the cost of the product. This is our cost to install it. There shouldn't be a whole bunch of, well, we've got a revolutionary new product. That's rarely going to work well in an IFB setting. If the government provides forms for you to use, you should not substitute your own forms to get more information or less information. You should use the government form that's provided. Bids have to be received by the exact time set for bid opening. Let me say that again. Bids have to be received by the exact time set for bid opening. Not sent, not put in the mailbox. They have to be in the government's hands at the time for bid opening. If no time is set, it's 4:30 p.m. local time at the government office. A lot of contracting officers will set 4:30 as the time. Sometimes they'll set earlier. I've seen offices that say 2 p.m. But this is not a flexible deadline. This is not, well, you know, I sent it 2 days ahead of time and I don't know why I got there 15 minutes late. It needs to be in their hands. I've seen contractors miss out on major work because, you know, they sent somebody to courier the bid over and they couldn't get past security at the entrance to the base. You need to work out all the logistics of getting the bid in ahead of time. You need to have the bid in the government's hands on time. It is not the government's fault if you are late. There are very narrow exceptions where the government can accept a late bid. Most of those, to my knowledge, only involve situations where the bid was in the government's hands but got held up because of a problem in a government system. For example, I've actually seen it before where bids go in and the government has an email crash, a server crash that day. And so everybody submits their bids and the contracting officer goes, why don't I have any bids? And it's because they're all held up in the email server. And they figure it out and realize that everyone's bids were held up. And they go back and they check the time that the bids made it into the system. And if the bid made it into the system before the exact time set for bid opening, then it's a valid bid and it will be considered when bid opening does occur. Modification. Bids can only be modified or withdrawn before the time set for bid opening. We'll talk about mistakes in bid in great depth at the end of this presentation. But you should assume that if you want to make changes to your bid, if you want to withdraw your bid, you need to pull it out before the bid opening happens. Bid openings can be postponed in emergencies or if the bid submission system fails. In the example I just gave, the contracting officer knows that the email system is down. They may say, we're going to postpone this bid opening until tomorrow so that we can have email submissions. Most of the time, government folks, you know, the contracting officers who administer these things, they want a fair, above board, you know, bid opening. They want everything to be the same for everybody. They want to preserve the integrity of the procurement process. That's their job, and they do it faithfully. So you should always presume that, you know, what's stated there is what's stated in your IFB as the time and place for bid submission. That's what they mean, and it's not a trick. It's not, you know, there's no way to game that system, and there's very little leeway if anything goes wrong in your submission. So like I said, figure out the logistics of your bid submission ahead of time. Next slide, please. So I mentioned we would talk about cancellation. FAR 14.404-1 covers cancellation. And by the way, I should mention, as I've been going along, I have listed all the FAR provisions from which the things that I'm speaking about come from. If you have any questions, hopefully you'll be able to take a look at the slide and look at the actual FAR provision that I'm referencing. Part 14 is really fairly straightforward, and obviously if you have questions, you can always contact me and reach out. I'm happy to talk to you about any questions you might have. Back to 14.404-1, the government is supposed to accept the lowest responsive bid. But there's a whole list of reasons in the FAR why they can reject all bids and cancel the IFB if there's a compelling reason. Those include the specifications were not made available, they were inadequate or ambiguous, or they weren't revised properly. In fairness, anytime there's a major problem with the specifications that were publicized, that really should be canceled, because you can't have an even playing field if people aren't working from the same specs. It's just not possible. If the requirement no longer exists, obviously they can cancel. If the IFB failed to include all necessary price-related factors, transportation, inspection, things like that. The bids identify a cheaper product that will satisfy the requirement. I've seen people try and blow up an IFB by submitting a bid for a lower price product. You know, that's a risky move. Maybe the government's going to turn around and say, yep, we want that product instead. But maybe they're going to say that's a non-responsive bid. Thanks very much. We want this particular product for reasons that you may or may not understand. That may have been in the IFB or they may not. But the government is certainly entitled to ask for a specific product, ask for a specific set of specifications to be performed, and they're entitled to get what they ask for. So I wouldn't recommend, taking the shot unless it's really not going to work for you otherwise. If prices are unreasonably high, or the government could self-perform for less, they can cancel. This one is not used lightly. I'm going to get into it in just a second. If bidding was collusive, obviously that's rare, but it does happen. If there are no responsive bids from responsible bidders, or it's in the public interest. Now, that last one seems incredibly broad, and they could really cancel for anything, and that's just not true. This is a discretionary decision, and there are situations where the government should cancel an IFB, but the courts look real closely at this, and they are not friendly to decisions to cancel IFBs really at all, but they are going to look for a compelling reason. They're going to expect the contracting officer to show why this needed to be canceled, because they consider honoring the IFB as an essential part of the integrity of the public procurement system. That the government puts out an IFB, people should be able to bid on it, and it should go to the lowest price bidder. And bidders spend a bunch of time and money. They may, they reach out to subcontractors. They spend, anybody who's put one of these bids together knows that it's a difficult process. It's not easy, especially on a larger procurement. The government shouldn't be able to cancel just because the prices were a bit higher than they expected, or maybe the contractors that they preferred didn't put in the lowest bid. Those aren't acceptable reasons, and the courts will generally hold the government to these rules and enforce them pretty strongly. That's not to say that IFBs don't get canceled. They certainly do, and a lot of the time it's not worth it for the contractors to fight over it. But sometimes there are incidences out there in the law, in the case law, where the government canceled without really having a good reason, and a contractor tries to prevent it, brings a protest, and some of those are successful. So I think that most of the time, if you see cancellations, they're going to be done in good faith, and the government is going to have good evidence that a compelling reason exists. Next slide, please. So rejection of individual bids. Obviously, nobody wants to have their bid rejected, but the government is empowered to do so. Under 14.404-2, government can reject an individual bid if it's non-responsive because it fails to conform to the IFB's essential requirements, the specifications, or the delivery schedule. Like I said before, it's got to conform in all material respects. You can't, if there's a delivery schedule that says you must deliver by July 1st, you can't say we'll have 80% there on July 1st and 20% there on August 1st. It's just not, it's not going to work. It's not fair to other bidders. What trips people up more than you would believe is conditions, contingencies, qualifications, limitations of liability, limitations of government rights, contingent pricing. And by contingent pricing, I mean you can't put in your bid that you will provide steel at market price on the date of delivery. And in all sorts of commercial transactions, that's completely legitimate. Under the UCC for commercial sales, it's 100% legitimate to say, I'm going to charge you market price. It is not in the government IFB setting. You can't do it. You have to state a price, and it's binding on you for your bid. And if you don't want to state a price because you're worried about the fluctuation of materials and there's no economic price adjustment clause, you're better off not bidding it than trying to put in a contingent price. If your price is unreasonable or materially unbalanced, what does unbalanced mean? It means the classic example of an unbalanced bid is one that front loads. So if there's two claims, one for mobilization and one for the work, if you put all your costs for the work into the mobilization claim because you want to get paid up front, that's an unbalanced bid, and it'll probably be rejected because it's pretty easy to spot. If the bidder is suspended, debarred, or not responsible, what's a responsible bidder? I said we would cover that. It's one that has the financial and organizational capability to perform and has a satisfactory record of ethical performance. And you can find that in FAR 9.104-1. And then if the bidder fails to provide a bid guarantee, that's a bond that says that the bidder will not withdraw their bid. It's used to protect the government against all sorts of shenanigans, people withdrawing their bids, people submitting, fake low bids and things like that, all of which are uncommon but have happened in the past. So the government may request a bid guarantee, and you got to give one if it's asked for. It is an essential part of the bid. The bidder's assets to be used in performance were sold after bid opening. It's very uncommon, but obviously it's a grounds for rejection. Next slide, please. So a few more details about bids before we move on to the final topic. Bids should not restrict the public disclosure of included descriptive literature. What does that mean? You can't include documents, descriptive literature of your product or your services that have trade secrets in them, and then say to the government, you can't disclose this to the public. After award, the government needs to disclose what they bought. They need to, give the other bidders some insight into the essential nature and type of the products or services that they purchase. So you can't hide the ball by saying, here's what we're going to provide, and you can't tell anyone. That can be rejected as a non-responsive bid. Bids can include all or none qualifications, but these cannot be withdrawn. All or none means if there are 8 things that are solicited within a single procurement, you can say we only want all these or none of them. But you can't withdraw that later on and say, well, we'll take 4. But the bid can, on its face, say we're only bidding on these 4. And that's all your bid is good for. And the government can consider whether it's better off getting all services from one bidder or whether it wants to split it amongst multiple bidders. Minor informalities can usually be waived. Minor informalities include failure to send the correct number of copies, provide information on number of employees. It can also include a failure to sign or acknowledge an amendment, but only if the bid indicates intent to be bound to the contract or the amendment. So you should sign your documents. That's obviously best practice, but minor things like that are not going to keep your bid from being valid and responsive. Next slide, please. So mistakes in bid is the last big topic here. The contracting officer is obligated to examine the bids for mistakes and request bidder verification if there's an apparent mistake in bid. The failure to inspect or alert the contractor of an error that the government knew of or should have known about may lead the courts to reform or rescind the contract after award. In other words, the government's not allowed to take advantage of obvious mistakes to the detriment of its contractors. The government's examination obligation is generally limited to the face of the bid. They don't have to go check your calculations. They don't have to go through all your supporting documents, see whether you made a mistake. But if everybody else bid $20 million and you bid $2 million, they need to call that to your attention because obviously there's a problem. Clerical errors can be corrected by the contracting officer before award. That's 20 million versus 2 million. Somebody put a decimal in the wrong place. That can be fixed. Obvious mistakes in discounts, delivery, or designation, all that should be fixed by the contracting officer without too much problem. Next slide, please. The bigger problem really is dealing with substantive mistakes. Next slide, please, Jennifer. There we go. The government can allow correction of a substantive mistake in a bid pre-award. Oh, I'm sorry, we skipped forward one too many. Could you go back one? So pre-award, if there's a clear and convincing evidence of both the mistake and the intended bid, absent that sort of evidence, the contracting officer may allow the bid to be withdrawn or direct the bid cannot be altered or withdrawn. Typically, if there's evidence that there was a mistake, but you can't figure out what the intended bid was from the face of the bid, they may allow withdrawal, but they won't allow you to correct it. To prove entitlement to an upward adjustment of the bid price for a mistake discovered pre-award, contractor has to show the mistake was a product of a clear-cut, clerical or arithmetic error or misreading of the specification, not just an error in business judgment. So there's case law on these. The reason being is that contractors don't want to be held to, serious mistakes in their bid. And also because some contractors will come back if they underbid something drastically and say, oh no, that's a mistake. And so this gets litigated quite a bit. Next slide, please. Mistakes alleged after award are generally subject to the normal disputes process. That's, submitting a claim, going to the ASPCA or the Court of Federal Claims, the whole disputes process. It's not easy. And to prove entitlement to a reformation of the contract to address a mistake, contractor has to prove mistake in fact occurred prior to contract award, the mistake was clear cut, the government knew or should have known about the mistake, the government didn't request verification or its request for verification was inadequate, and the proof of the intended bid is established. This is an uphill battle. It can be done successfully. And, the government may be willing to come to terms and reach a settlement if there's a serious mistake in your bid. Their goal very rarely is to treat you unfairly, but they also are on guard against, against the fact that people just want to change their price afterwards. And they have a responsibility to protect taxpayer funds against that as well. So next slide, please. I'm going to wrap up here with this last issue, which is award. Award can be made within the time for acceptance specified in the bid based on price and price-related factors only. If there's more than one award, they have to be made separately. They can't include two contractors on the same award. A partial award must identify those parts of the IFB that are being awarded. Award can only be made to a responsible bidder with a reasonable price. That's a price reasonable analysis, not a price realism analysis. There are special rules for the evaluation of the final price based on the inclusion of prompt payment discount and economic price adjustment clause. They're pretty complicated, but suffice to say that economic price adjustments will depend on whether they were proposed by the contractor or the government. Prompt payment discounts are not assessed in the bid price, but they are applied in the award. If you want to know more about these sort of things, contact me. I'm happy to explain it to you. If all bids are equal, then priority will be given to small businesses, but an award may actually be determined by drawing lots if they're all equal and nobody gets priority. With that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all for spending some time with me learning about FAR Part 14. Again, my name is Michael Richard. I work at McCarter & English. I'm special counsel there for government contracts, and you can reach me at mrichard@mccarter.com.
Great, thank you, Michael. That was a great presentation on FAR Part 14, sealed bidding. Great content, and your slides were well organized. So thank you so much for that and taking the time to be with us today. Again, all of our webinars are recorded, so you'll find this on YouTube later this afternoon or early evening. If you have questions about FAR Part 14, please contact Michael. You've got his contact information there. I'm sure he'd be happy to field your questions. Again, our YouTube channel here is complimentary. Doesn't take but 2 moments of your time to subscribe. There's no cost to subscribe. And that's it. On Friday, we're going to cover FAR Part 15 with Carrie Palmatier. And next week will be 16 and 17. All of the links to register on our website, jennifershouse.com. Just go to the section called the FAR, and you can register there. So thanks again, Michael, and thanks to all the attendees.